Pregame webinar with CDW, Lenovo, and Veeam. We're very excited to have you all here today. Joining us this morning is Alex Crandall and Dan Bynes, who will be sharing their expertise on how to build a resilient, secure, and scalable data environment. So before we dive in, just a couple of housekeeping notes. So if you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to drop them in the chat. We'll be monitoring throughout. Also, make sure to stay with us until the very end, as we're going to be covering some important know before you go details. It'll just give you everything you need to know for the upcoming Tailgate experience this weekend. With that, let's get started. So Alex, over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Amanda. Now, the big question, can I hit the button to, hey, go to the next slide? And there we go. So what I wanted to talk to everyone about today is a few weeks ago, we did the early release of the Veeam Backup Replication version 13 on Linux. Now, in this particular iteration, it comes to you as a pre-packaged either ISO, so you can deploy it wherever you like, or if you want to deploy this inside VMware, you can actually download it as a template file. So it takes a lot of the work, the guesswork, and the configuration away from end users yourselves and allows you to get it done a lot quicker. Now, traditionally, Veeam has always been an application that you deploy on a Windows server. And hey, that's worked great for 12.3 version so far. But on version 13, we recognize that it's a good opportunity for us to be able to deliver something pre-hardened for you, so you don't have to spend time, patching, managing patches, managing security. This comes to you out of the box, pre-hardened, locked down, and actually all the patches themselves are managed by Veeam. So we're taking all the OS updates, all the product updates, we're doing those for you. So it is truly an appliance-like experience. As I said, I kind of skipped the gun a little bit on what I was talking about before, but ultimately, why do we do this? Makes it easy to set up. All you have to do is provide it either the template VM, a piece of hardware, install, do a couple basic configurations, a few basic accounts, and before you know it, it's up and running. You can log into the new web interface, which is new for version 13, or use the traditional Veeam Backup Replication thick console to access it like you would today. Now, security out of the box, pretty simple. We're pre-hardening this. It meets DISA state compliance, which I believe is my next slide, and that talks about that. But again, there's zero trust built into that. It's all based on Linux. It's all pre-hardened, and you can take advantage of it quite easily. Now, Amanda, I unfortunately can't see the little arrows in the bottom corner, so if you could hit the next slide for me. The joys of the white background. Hey, there we go. So what does this mean in the real world? It means less management. And if you're a couple of people I talked to, it also gets you away from a couple extra Windows licenses. So in previous years, you would have had to have that Windows license as well as a SQL license, ideally. So that can be eliminated. We're taking that all over, putting it into this Linux appliance. In the background, we're using Postgres. And ultimately, at the end of the day, it just allows you to consume it without having to do, the regular maintenance, keep watering those flowers, make sure they grow. You can just consume and be done. For that, you can see, from a bootloader perspective, you can go back there and deploy. That's if you were using the ISO. There's the template option. And if you can, a keen-eyed observer will see there that the actual appliance itself is based on Rocky Linux. So if you're not familiar with Rocky Linux, it is a fork of Red Hat Enterprise or RHEL. I already kind of covered the DISA STIG, but a couple of high points there is obviously we enforce a certain password length and complexity. You can't use the same password twice. Four eyes authorization is there. So actually, when you're going through the setup, we have, and you see the little wizard right there, is the concept of a security officer. So when a security officer is enabled, any substantial changes inside the environment have to go through that approval process first. So if Dan and I are working together and all of a sudden Dan's having a bad day and he wants to go in and delete a bunch of backups or remove a backup repository, well, that's going to go into a queue, and I'm going to get that as a security offer and say, well, hey, Dan, what's going on here? Like, why are you trying to wholesale delete all these things? And Dan's already checked out somewhere, so that's all right. I'll get him later. But again, it's just making sure you have this auditable chain of not a single source of truth inside your organization, right? No one person can do everything when you have the security officer enabled. Now, I mentioned it earlier, so new for version 13 is this new web interface. So it is the first iteration of this, so it is limited to things like specifically Hyper-V, VMware VMs, managing some infrastructure pieces, and in fact you're using Veeam 1 as well, which version 13 of Veeam 1 is also out and available if you want to put that in your organizations or upgrade. You can actually get some of your reports and dashboards directly in the same web interface. So from a day-to-day management perspective, if you're just going in and needing to do basic restores, rerun jobs, check on infrastructure components, you can actually just use the web interface for that and not actually launch the SICK client. And that's all HTML5, it's all dynamic. There is a dark mode if you're anything like me, but for presentations, light mode always makes it a little easier. What you'll also see is on that web interface is it's getting homogenized across the platform. So the new Veeam 1 web interface looks like that. Any of our cloud products web interface all look like that. So you get the same look and feel across the product suite. Now, with the transition to Linux, and some people in the past, when it has been a Windows-based server, have joined those servers to the domain. I get it. It makes account management easier. It is a bit of a risk. But with Linux, generally speaking, you don't join Linux servers to an Active Directory domain. So how do you manage those accounts? Well, there are local accounts in the system, which you can add through the host management interface, or you can integrate this with a third-party identity provider. Most commonly, if we're all on here, we're all on Teams, we have some kind of Microsoft ID, there's Entra ID somewhere in the background. So we could tie your authentication and logins for your Veeam infrastructure to Entra ID. And then if you have any conditional access policies, Intune policies, enforcements, all of those will be adhered to. So let's say when I used to configure these type of policies, it was always you wanted 2 out of 3, which was you either had a trusted device, a trusted location, or passed an MFA prompt. So good example, as you can see by these slightly blurred out beds, I'm at a hotel at the moment. So if I were to log into my Veeam server and I was enforcing and say, hi, I need 2 of those things. Well, I'm not in a trusted location. We know that for sure. I am on a trusted device. So what I'm going to do is push an MFA challenge. And if I approve it, then hey, I've met my 2 out of 3 threshold. Now, a more tinfoil hat approach to that would, hey, you need all 3. So what does that force you to do? Forces you to be on VPN, see your devices coming in from a trusted network, and then you're hitting 3 out of 3 at that point. With that management interface, like I was talking about before, this is all automated patching in the background from Veeam. So when you go into this interface, there are settings here that you can configure and make sure they fit for your organization. But at the base level, you will be forced to do security patches every 30 days. But you can also do security and feature update, or you can do the feature updates ad hoc at your preferred time. Now, a lot of places do have things like change blackouts, especially when we're coming into the holiday season. So you can defer these or set these to defer for a certain amount of time. And then when you come back after the holidays, catch up on maybe a feature patch, but maybe you still want the security patches even throughout that time because that is important. But you can delay anything else until, the time of your choice. Now, the other nice thing is when we built and it's called the JEOS or Just Enough OS, as they've been calling it internally, is we actually package that as an ISO, and you can use that for the deployment of different Veeam assets in your environment. So if you wanted to use that lockdown managed version of the OS for, say, a proxy, a repository, and I'll talk a little more about the repository part with Dan in a little bit, or you could use it as like a tape server. And when you do that and it connects back to Veeam or the main Veeam console, we can actually manage all the patching and updates for all of those components through the main VBR interface. So you're actually getting that centralized management of not only different backup platforms or resources in your network, but also the Veeam components themselves. Now that user management piece, like I said, there are some because we're not joining this to domain, there still has to be some local accounts. And you can also see some of these accounts as traditionally we used to call them break glass accounts. So if you're doing all your management through a third-party IDP provider, there's a network outage, you can't authenticate to the server, you can still have a local account as your break glass so you can still get in and perform operations. Now, there are 3 flavors of those accounts. Hosted min, meaning you can not only get into the hosted min interface, but you can get into VBR as well. And that'll allow you to do things you can see in the host management interface. It's fairly limited to things like network, time, who's actually accessing it, any updates. And the application piece at the bottom is where you'd actually see all the Veeam services if they're up and running. And let's say you needed to restart a specific plugin, you could do it from that interface. Now, that new one I was talking about earlier, the security officer. So like I said, if Dan doesn't like me one day and wants to delete a bunch of stuff, it goes into that queue. Well, the security officer would actually log into this same host management interface, and they would see that approval or deny request. When that goes through, they would either get an email alert, or depending if you have syslog forwarding set up as an example, there would be an alert triggered through that, so it could go through a security audit as well. But at the end of the day, that security officer can only access this and can only approve or deny any of those actions. And then finally, the user. So user, pretty straightforward. That's going to just be someone who logs into backup and replication, never the host management console. And then from there, you can assign them further access to resources inside VPR.
Hey, Alex, I have a question about that.
Yeah, fire away, Dan.
One of the things that has always scared the living hell out of the industry has been the rise of ransomware. With the change control features built into Veeam now, one of the things that ransomware guys have been doing is deleting unencrypted backups. Would this help to stop that?
So it would actually. So let's say in a situation where I have an old Veeam repository and it's on a Windows system. Now you can get third-party applications to try to help you mitigate some of that. But at the end of the day, inside Veeam, if it's on a Windows and you go and say delete, it will delete. But if you have the 4-eyes authorization and the security officer defined, it will put that delete into a pending until it's approved. So that's where it's the old like 2 nuclear key situation.
Sure.
No one person can make those substantial changes.
So it really is another line of defense against data loss from ransomware.
Absolutely. And actually,
Very
when you layer it on top of what's on the screen right now, which is enhanced role-based access, is let's say it's one of those just generic users that I've created. This is someone maybe from a help desk or a tier 1 support who really all they're going to do is restore a couple files, maybe rerun a job and, check on some logs. Well, I can actually build limited access to them so they can only perform certain actions. So in your situation you were talking about, Dan, is I could have the ability to modify or delete backups limited to a certain set of trusted users who I'm enforcing things like MFA or privilege access management on top of, to limit the ability or the likelihood that those people are going to be able to delete things, and then leave the day-to-day operations people to just be able to do that. No deletes, no modifies, just rerun basic restores. And you can scope that based on different hypervisors, different pieces of infrastructure, different types of jobs, or even being able to manipulate or restore, not manipulate, but restore backups from a particular repository.
Right.
So we did have what we call role-based access control in the previous versions of the product. I would argue there was a bit of marketing spin there, and there was some, but not to the level that we actually have today. So again, the nitpicky person in me wouldn't say this is enhanced role-based access control. I would say this is role-based access control now.
Right. All right. Thanks.
And now the last piece of it before I throw it over to Dan, and I want to talk about kind of some of the infrastructure pieces and what we can do with Lenovo and hand it over to them, is that final piece of the host management, anything we're doing, this is all in this web interface. Because at the end of the day, today you probably had, well, you would have had your backup or replication deployed on a Windows server. And 99, I'd almost say nearly 100% of people just would remote desktop to that server, use the console, log off, and that was it. Well, we don't really do that inside the Linux world. And actually, even if you say deploy this as a VM and went to the local interface, it is a stripped down. You can put a password in, you can put your username password rather, you get an MFA challenge for a one-time password. And then the only thing you can do inside that, local console is update an IP, update a time server, reboot the server, or shut down the server. So even there, you're limited to what you can actually do. So again, we're basically trying to secure this as much as possible and make sure that everything is limited to specific users with specific permissions, and no user in this instance has root permission. Now, I was talking a little bit about, this is all built on our Just Enough OS, and you can actually take that Just Enough OS and use it for different pieces or different components inside your infrastructure, whether that be proxies or repositories. And actually, this is a great, again, segue for Dan, is that just enough OS ISO, you could take that and use it on a Lenovo server if you wanted a hardware proxy to be able to process your data. Or let's say you were deploying a new repository, again, using Lenovo, you can take that ISO, deploy it on there, and it'll be pre-hardened, immutable out of the box. And you can take advantage of all that centralized patching, the ability to make sure, or the peace of mind to make sure, rather, that things aren't going to be deleted or modified before your set time, so you can sleep easier at night. But Dan, I'll pass it over to you now.
Well, thank you. So I think I'm going to do this the old-fashioned way and just let Amanda forward my slides. So go ahead, Amanda, just pop over to the next slide. So my name is Dan Bynes. I am a storage architect. I've been doing data storage and data protection for about 30 years now. I have done everything from Walmart through Fortune 50 companies, Fortune 500 companies, down to small regional, companies all up and down the Eastern Seaboard, all the way across Canada. I have a long history of building solutions to protect customers and keep their data available. As far as Lenovo is concerned, if you do not know, and a lot of people do not, we have a very vibrant data center storage environment, solution set. We have, what are we, a $64 billion, $66 billion global company with everything from cameras at the edge and cell phones and those order lockers like you have for Google or Amazon, into the data center up to the cloud. We have an entire solution set. And with that, we have the relationships with these business partners that you think we would have. So, the list at the bottom is a very small smattering of the different relationships that we have, but they are what you would think they would be. They're very tight, they're integrated, and we for most part have had them for decades. From a storage solution point of view, we kind of break down into three big groups. The big one is what we call the SDS, the software defined storage. That is the 20, 30 million IOPS a second sort of thing. Generally, these are very specialized environments. It's rare that we talk about them. I cover the SMB space, so I almost never talk about them. But they are out there if you ever need the solution. We also have, the hyperconverged infrastructures. So we have a relationship with Nutanix where we will put their software on our gear, the Microsoft, the MX, and then what has now become a bit of a bad word, if you will, is the VX with the VMware. Not necessarily because VMware is bad, just because of the whole thing with Broadcom. I'm sure you guys are all familiar with it, probably to a level that you probably don't ever want to be. And then the final one is what we would call traditional 3-tier or dual controller. I've heard it called a bunch of different things, traditional storage. And that would be the DE, DG, DM series, that whole series, that second bar down from the top. So that's what we're going to talk about mostly today. Amanda, on the next page. So in this portfolio, while we do switches and tapes and other things, it really comes down to one more up. It really comes down to two platforms, the DE and then the DM and DG series. For those of you who do not know, we are an OEM for NetApp, which means that we build all of the hardware to spec. We have our own supply chain. We have our own manufacturers. We do that manufacturing ourselves. They will then supply the operating system. We sit in kind of what I call an advisory role, if you will. They'll come to us and say, "Hey, what do you guys need?" And the next release, 2 releases out, whatever. What are your customers looking for? And generally speaking, it's the same thing that they're looking for, right? It's not like our customers are special, but we have that relationship. The 2 facilities in North Carolina and Raleigh sit right next to each other. We have a joint global initiative with NetApp, so we have a very tight relationship with them. We have our own supply chain, like I said. We have our own sales force. We have our own support staff. And the only reason we go back to NetApp at all is for a bug, some kind of zero-day attack, some kind of bug. When they release an OS, they will send it to us. We release about 45 days after they do, generally, and soon after we release, you'll usually see a P1. Now, this isn't always this way, but it's generally this way. You'll see a patch, P1 release that comes out from NetApp. And in that patch, I would tell you 50 to 75% of the bugs that are found in our lab. So it's this very tight relationship between the 2. All right. That said, we have 2 different basic platforms. The DE series, which would be a block level only platform. This is the one on the right-hand side of the screen. It is block level only. So it only does SAN attach, either direct attach or through a switch, a SAN, a physical SAN. It'll do fiber channel, iSCSI, or SAS. It is a very resilient hardware platform, 5 or 6 nines of availability, depending on which one you're talking about. It has a very simplified management system. It has intentionally been kept what I would call feature light. It doesn't have all the bells and whistles. It doesn't have deduplication and compression. It doesn't have cloning or all these other things. It does have the ability of doing snapshots. It does have the ability of replicating from one side to the other, but that's kind of it. And we have intentionally kept that platform that way so that when, so it's basically purpose built for certain workloads. And we're trying to do 2 things. 1, we're trying to make it easy to manage. And 2, we're trying to make it inexpensive. I will never say cheap with this product. It is a very well-built platform from a hardware point of view. It is inexpensive. So really what we're looking at is video stores. So, municipalities or school districts, have a video project to be able to store their stuff. This is a perfect program for them. I have dozens, hundreds of these across North America between the United States and Canada doing exactly that. The other thing is basically like a dedicated space for very important files. Several customers of mine on the higher end systems will use the 6600 has the ability of doing 2 million IOPS a second NVMe. So, they're using it specifically for their CRM environment. And then, of course, the last one would be a backup target. And this is where Veeam and Lenovo really come together nicely. I have, again, dozens or hundreds of these, probably hundreds of these across North America being used as a backup target for Veeam. And it works great. It integrates perfectly with them. We have all those relationships between us both on the product side, but also on the management side. They're working together. So that's the backup piece. The other piece is what we would traditionally call the DM or DG series. This is what you would traditionally call your on-tap environment. So this is a very full-featured unified platform. So it means we're doing file or block or object. File is NAS, block is SAN, and then object, S3. We can either be a target for S3 or we can talk to a target if we want to. So we can talk to a cloud thing. The only difference between a DM and a DG is the drive in the DG. It's a marketing decision to do that. It was not my decision to do that, but it's the QLC NVMe SSDs. This is a platform that is, it is not quite as fast, especially in the very intense small block random read write that a TLC NVMe drive would be, but it's the kind of fast enough. And where we are now as an industry is that most customers just don't push the bandwidth that they have available to them. 16 or 32 gig fiber channel, 20, 10 or 40 gig Ethernet. They just don't push that kind of bandwidth. So these platforms, you don't need them to be Ferraris. You need them to be kind of like, a Honda Odyssey. It has to do a lot of really good things, but it doesn't have to be super fast. All right. The reason I'm going into this is because of the relationship with Veeam. We have multiple different ways we can protect the data in our environment, both from the DE point of view, but also from the DM and DG series. And they all interact with Veeam. My question before about ransomware was very salient because it's one of those things that really does scare the living hell out of people. What do you do when being attacked? How do you defend your environment? All right. First and foremost, as a primary environment, the DM and DG series have a very robust snapshot functionality. That snapshot functionality talks to VMware. It also talks to Veeam. So we have plugins into both the hypervisor space. So I say VMware Hyper-V, and also Veeam. So one of those guys will come to us and say, hey, VMware will come and say, hey, can you take a snapshot? We'll take a snapshot of a file system or a data store. Veeam will then come to us and say, hey, did you guys just take a snapshot? We'll say, yes, we did. They'll be great. They say, great, we'll back that up for you. And they take both the data and the metadata and they fire it off to the DE series as a data repository. Between our ability to do snapshots, our ability to do immutable objects, we have what's called an anti-ransomware engine in there. It's basically a guard dog that sits on the side, making sure that any ransomware attacks are detected and then stopped actively. So then you tie that in with the protections that we were just talking about with Veeam. You have this wonderful multi-layered ecosystem to protect your data, both from just simple mistakes, people just making mistakes. It's not nefarious, it's not intentional, it's just a mistake, to actual attacks by ransomware. All right, so Amanda, next slide, please. So I kind of described this a second ago. This would be a traditional three-tier, whoops, there you go, up one. This is kind of a traditional, there you go. This is kind of a traditional data center protection environment. So what you're seeing on the left-hand side is a very traditional environment for a data center. Our data stores, the representation of several physical platforms with either ESXi or Hyper-V on it, so acting as a hypervisor. And then Veeam being able to back that up to a DE series. We, of course, can provide the hardware pretty much for all of this. And the Veeam will be able to provide the backup environment. I will say right now, a lot of people, I don't know, backup is one of those things that's been around as long as computers have been. And sometimes people don't think it is a, sexy thing to talk about. I am here to tell you, it is probably, it's like plumbing in the wall. When it doesn't work, you're going to have to tear everything open and fix it, right? When it works, it just works and it's great. But it doesn't work, it's really bad. Veeam is that exact sort of thing. People don't think about backup until it is, is needed. And when you need it, it has to be good. And that's where Veeam really excels. Okay, so on the left-hand side, we have an environment. We've taken a snapshot, like I said. We're able to back that up. So next slide, Amanda. And what you're going to see over the next few slides is how do we do that? Well, the first one is Veeam just backs up the data store, right? So this is a SAN NFS data or SAN or NFS data store. We take a snapshot. Veeam goes, that's fine. Just leave the snapshot on file. We're just going to back up the actual VM or the the data store itself, and they do it, and they push it off to a DE series. From there, you can stage it to tape if you want, or you can have Veeam copied off to the cloud. It's a very solid way to do the backup. It gives a lot of resilience to the environment. It protects the data. So that's the first one. Amanda, the next one. A better way to do this would be to allow, like I said, I described before. Whoop, one more time, back up. One more. So one more down. Up. There we go. No, one more time. This is the downside of doing this. There we go. Okay, thanks, Amanda. So the second way to do this, which is a better way to do this, is what I kind of described before. Say this is a VMware environment living on hardware, Lenovo servers, with our DM or DG platform in the middle as a data store. We have this ability of doing those snapshots. The snapshots, we can do 1,023 snapshots per volume. Those snapshots are then read-only, so there is a certain ransomware protection level of protection against ransomware just by them being read-only. At that point, what'll happen is Veeam can come into us and say, "Hey, we have hooks into you. Can we back up that snapshot?" And we say, "Yes, we can." And so we present them both, like I said, both the data and the metadata, and then recover and then send that off to a backup disk as a target. Again, you can send it off to tape. You can send it off to cloud if you want to from there. You'll see in a second why that's powerful. Amanda, one more time, just one click. There we go. Now, the best way to do this to protect the data is data store, the data center on the left-hand side, you're replicating to a secondary site. So now you have true DR, right? So if something happens at the primary environment, there's a second copy of it someplace else. Now, the wonderful piece about this is our platform and Veeam are both aware of each other and how we do things. So if we move the data, Veeam is aware of it, which is a very powerful tool to keep track of what's going on. One of the things that I see within data protection schemes is people try to overthink sometimes, and they try to make things too complex. What I would suggest is you want things to be as uncomplex and as elegant as possible. If we are in charge of replication, let us do the replication. Veeam will be aware of it, but they're not going to be involved in it. If you want Veeam to do the replication, that's fine. We can let them do the replication, but either one or the other. So we've sent it off the secondary site. We've done a snapshot on the primary. We've sent the actual mirror and then the snapshots to the secondary site. And then from there, we have a Veeam backup to be able to go off to a DE target or tape or cloud or whatever your target is at the end. That's going to be the best way to do it. It's not going to impact performance on the primary, and you end up with multiple copies, at least 2 copies in 3 places. That's the very basic rule of thumb as far as data protection is concerned. Now, Amanda, one more click. There we go. Now for restores, like I said, since we are tied into Veeam and Veeam is tied into us, when it comes time for a restore, you have multiple options. And that's what you're trying to create with a good backup environment DR strategy. You're trying to create options for yourself about how you protect yourself and how you recover because it is when bad things happen. So first and foremost, you have the ability of just simply restoring a snapshot from the primary side. It's a very simple thing to do. It takes a few seconds to a few minutes, depending on what it is. Files, they're going to recover in a few seconds. Entire file systems or large databases, give it a few minutes. Now we've allowed Veeam to hook into our snapshots, hook into our file systems, hook into the backups, and they have the ability to recover. Now, the second line of defense here is that they can recover a snapshot from disk, from a backup, and actually start serving that to the VMs. So you can actually start getting back to work quicker with that restore. It's a very powerful tool, again, for both protecting data, but also efficiency within the environment, right? So people can get back to work quicker, because that's really what this is about. It's about keeping data available so that people can do the work, so that the company can make money, and we can all put food on our table at night. All right. I think that's the end for me, Amanda. Give me one more click. So I just threw a bunch of stuff at you. Any quick questions from there? Anybody have any questions about what I threw at you? Okay. Then Amanda, I turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dan. All right, so we're just going to go over some quick know before you go for the event coming up on Sunday. So just a little bit of the agenda. We did add a third stop in St. Catharines. So thank you to everybody for responding to the survey just to give your preferred meeting spot. But just a quick overview. So the first group will be meeting at the CDW West Mall. And then from there, we will be going towards Hamilton for the second pickup. And then our final stop at St. Catharines before we head across the border. Super, super important. And we will go over this. I'm sure everyone already knows, but please do not forget your passports. We will not be able to cross the border without them. So please remember to bring that. When we arrive at the stadium, we will have the shuttle for the day that will be parked there. So if you do need to leave any large bags in the shuttle, you can. And then from there, we are going to have the tailgate experience that is private to us. And then we are going to, of course, watch the game. It's going to be a really great time. And then we are going to head back and then just kind of the opposite. So our first stop will be in St. Catharines and then Hamilton, and then our final stop at West Mall.
Can I say something?
Yeah, of course.
You spelled St. Catharines wrong. Surprised Steve didn't catch
that. Thank you.
Amazing. We will fix that. Thank you.
Thank God Wayne didn't see this. He'd be freaking out.
I've done it a million times.
So we have the exact shuttle bus addresses listed here. We also have them that we're going to send this document to everybody just so everyone has it, but the emails that we sent off yesterday also have the exact addresses just in case anybody needs to check. The shuttles will have a CDW sign, so please look out for that. But if you opted to be in the WhatsApp group, we will also be able to contact you and kind of give you a better idea of when we are arriving. Washrooms are available for your convenience on the bus, which is always great. There will also be snacks and drinks, alcoholic and non-alcoholic, that will be provided during the trip. So again, reminder, can't stress this enough. Please do not forget your passports. Super important. If you take away anything from this, please bring that. Reminder as well, this is a 21 plus event exclusively for our group. So please do not bring any additional guests as we will not have enough tickets to accommodate. They do have a bag policy that we've included here. So just a quick link, but again, if you do have any large bags that you did want to bring with you, you can leave those on the shuttle bus before entering the arena. Also, this is an outdoor event, rain or shine, so please dress warmly. Maybe bring a poncho just in case. Layers and of course team gear is encouraged. So the tickets will be shared before the event. So today the tickets will be going out. The tailgate tickets are separate from the actual game tickets. So the game tickets will be sent to you. Please don't forget to accept them. If you haven't received an email before the end of today, please reach out to either myself or Renee. Her email is just listed here as well. The WhatsApp group will also be created either the day before or the morning of. So if you have opted, you will be able to communicate with the team from there. And I know, thank you again for everybody who sent this. But just the meeting spot. So if everybody just wanted to take a quick peek, make sure that yours is in the right spot. Again, if you need to make any changes, please email myself or Renee. Just going to leave this up here for a couple of seconds.
And just while everybody's taking a look at that, I just wanted to thank our sponsors, Lenovo and Veeam. Really appreciate it. It's going to be a good game. We are playing the Saints. It is going to be an absolute blowout, and I can't wait. Again, I know a lot of the folks on this call. I'm just going to, can you see my passport here? Please remember your passport. It's very important. I'm really looking forward to seeing everybody. I'll be jumping on it in Hamilton. Bailey, that passport, thanks for you specifically. Just remember the passport. Gonna be a great time.
It's already in my bag. It's already in my bag. We're good.
And it's gonna be a great time. And yeah, if you have any questions, Renee's contact's in there. But obviously, I know a lot of you folks certainly reach out to me at any time or give me a call early in the morning. I'll be also en route to Hamilton, and really looking forward to it. Thanks, everybody.
Amazing. Thanks, Steve. And we do have an Uber code for anybody that is going to be taking Uber to their meeting spots. This will also be sent to you as well, but just putting it here just in case you can either scan the QR code or the link, and it'll get you to and from the meeting spot. And that's pretty much all I have. So if anybody has any questions about anything, we will be sending this document to everyone after this call, just so you have all the information that you need. But if there's anything that we didn't go over that you think might be useful, please drop it in the chat or come off mute.